They say the ocean gives and the ocean takes. For Mick, it took the love of his life. For Talia, it took her courage. But when two broken souls meet on the shore of Byron Bay, the waves begin to whisper something different, that maybe, just maybe, healing comes in the form of salt, silence, and second chances. It was a Thursday morning in Byron Bay, where the skies often painted themselves in orange and coral before the day even began. The waves whispered their old secrets, rolling endlessly to shore. And at the end of Lawson Street, in a worn-out weatherboard cottage with flaking blue paint, lived Mick Dawson, a retired lifeguard with a sun-wrinkled face and the weight of the ocean in his eyes. Mick had spent 40 years watching over that beach. He wasn't a man of many words, but every scar on his body told a story of erupt currents, midnight storms, lost tourists, and saved lives. People respected Mick. He was the silent protector of Byron, always on his red quad bike before dawn, thermos in hand. But life was different now. His wife Lena had passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. It came fast, like a rogue wave. One week, they were dancing barefoot at the Byron Blues Fest. The next he was holding her hand in a sterile hospital room, listening to machines beep her away. Since then, Mick hadn't stepped into the sea. Not once. The beach, his sanctuary, had become a place of silence, not the peaceful kind, but the aching, empty kind. One windy morning, as Mick sipped his coffee by the veranda, he saw her, a girl no older than 17, dragging a longboard twice her size down the street, tears streaking across her sunburned cheeks. She dropped it right outside his gate and sat on the curb. He didn't speak. Just watched. The next day, she came again. And the next. And again. Until one morning, Mick walked down, stood beside her, and said, "You surf?" She looked up, startled. "Used to. Can't anymore." Anxiety. Mick nodded. "Yeah, that bastard doesn't need fins to drown you." And just like that, a quiet friendship formed. Her name was Talia Nguyen. Half Vietnamese, half Aussie, from Sydney. She'd moved to Byron with her mum after her parents split. Surfing had once been her lifeline, until a wipeout 6 months ago left her with broken ribs and a panic disorder that clawed at her lungs every time she touched the water. Mick didn't push, but each morning they'd sit together. Say little. Let the sea speak. One dawn, under a pink, blushed sky, Talia said, "I want to try again. But I'm scared." Mick exhaled. Deep and long. You don't beat fear. You learn to swim with it. And for the first time in years, Mick dusted off his own board from the shed. The wax had cracked, the leash dry rotted, but it still held weight, of memory, of love, of Lena. That morning, they paddled out together. At first, it was calm. Then a set rolled in. Big. Powerful. Talia froze. "Breathe, kid," Mick shouted, his voice slicing through the wind. "It's just water. It only has power if you give it fear." She closed her eyes, paddled hard, and dropped into the wave. It wasn't graceful. She wobbled, almost bailed, but then, for a moment, she stood. Just for a second. But it was enough. She screamed. A scream of freedom. Of victory. Of reclaiming herself. Mick, watching from behind, felt a tear, salty and unexpected, roll down his cheek. He hadn't cried since Lena. Chapter 4. The storm. The town whispered of a storm coming. The Bureau of Meteorology issued warnings, and most surfers stayed away. But Mick knew the sea. This wasn't just any storm. It felt personal. That night, while thunder cracked over Byron, Talia's mum called Mick. "She's gone." Took the board. Mick didn't ask where. He already knew. He raced down to the point. The wind was vicious, howling like a beast. The ocean was chaos, white, frothing, angry. And there she was, Talia, caught in the current. "Mick," she screamed, voice broken. Without hesitation, he dove in. Every muscle screamed, every joint begged him to stop, but he pushed through. Just like old times. He reached her, grabbed her wrist, fought the pull. They tumbled, twisted, the water crashing around them. Minutes felt like hours. And finally, they surfaced, coughing and breathless, clinging to a rock ledge like castaways. "You idiot," he whispered. "You bloody brave idiot." The next day, the sun returned. Gentle, forgiving. Mick stood at the shoreline, board in hand. Talia beside him. They paddled out again. Not to conquer. Not to fight. But to say thank you, to the sea, to pain, to healing. He caught one last wave. And as he glided in, with the wind in his hair and Lena's laughter in his heart, he finally let go of the grief. Mick Dawson, the man of the sea, was home again. A week after the storm, Talia knocked on Mick's door holding a folded piece of paper. "I found this," she said, "in your old board bag." It was a letter. The handwriting was unmistakable, Lena's. Mick stared at it for a long time, his hands trembling slightly. He hadn't known she'd left anything behind. Slowly, he opened it. "Mick, if you're reading this, I'm probably not walking the beach with you anymore. But I need you to promise something. When the ocean calls again, don't ignore it. It was never mine alone. It was always ours. Find someone to paddle out with. Let the tide carry your heart home. I'll be there, somewhere between the waves." His breath caught. A wave rose inside him, heavier than water. "She wanted you to keep going," Talia said softly. Mick nodded. She always did. They began walking together every morning, from Watergoss up to the Cape Byron lighthouse. Locals started noticing. The silent lifeguard with the fierce young surfer girl, a pair of unexpected legends in the making. During those walks, stories poured out of Mick, stories he'd never told before. Of a near drowning in '87. Of a French backpacker who proposed to his girlfriend in the middle of a rescue. Of the first time Lena kissed him after he saved a Labrador from a Arab current. And Talia listened. Always listened. "I think," she said one morning, "we should start something. Like a surf program. For kids with fear, anxiety, grief. Everything you helped me through." Mick raised an eyebrow. "You think anyone'd listen to two broken boards like us?" "No," she smiled. "But they'll listen to two who didn't sink." Chapter 7. The Wave Haven. 3 months later, with the help of locals, donations, and the quiet power of community, Wave Haven was born, a grassroots surf therapy program run by Mick and Talia. The first session had only 5 kids. One wouldn't step onto the sand. One flinched at every splash. Mick didn't rush them. He knew healing didn't move in straight lines. He sat with them, told them about the storm, about fear, about Lena. Talia showed them how to fall, then how to stand again. Slowly, they came back to life, like seashells washed ashore, each with their own song. One golden evening, as the sun dipped low behind the horizon, Talia stood on her board and rode a clean, endless wave, the kind that makes you believe in rebirth. Mick watched from the water. "Lena would be proud," she shouted as she paddled back. "She is," Mick replied, voice thick. Then, for the first time since her passing, he turned his head up to the horizon and whispered, "I did it, love. I found the way back." A gull soared overhead. The sea shimmered. And the world, for a brief, perfect moment, was whole again. His name was Luca Harper. 11 years old. Skinny frame. Eyes always down. When he first arrived at Wave Haven, he didn't speak. Not a word. His mum whispered to Mick. His father drowned off the coast of Corf's harbour last summer. Luca hasn't touched water since. Mick understood. You don't fight a fear like that. You sit beside it. And wait. Talia gave Luca a job, waxing boards, handing out towels, drawing waves on the chalkboard schedule. 3 weeks in, he finally asked, "Did the ocean ever scare you?" Mick looked at him long and slow. "Still does, mate. That's how I know I respect it." That was the first time Luca smiled. One afternoon, during a routine session, one of the boys panicked mid-wave and collided with Talia. The board smashed into her collarbone. A sickening crunch. She dropped into the water. Mick sprinted into the surf, instincts on fire. He pulled her in, cradled her like he had so many others before. At the hospital, the X-rays lit up her fears. "You'll need to rest," the doctor said. No surfing for at least 2 months. Talia didn't speak the whole drive home. At Wave Haven, she sat alone, watching the kids run drills without her. "I feel useless," she whispered to Mick. "You're not," he said. "You're still riding the biggest wave of all, the one inside." While Talia healed, Mick returned to Lena's old garden, now a tangle of weeds and memories. He began digging, clearing, planting. Lavender, rosemary, frangipani, the flowers Lena had once called sunlight in roots. Talia joined him, one arm still in a sling. She painted a wooden sign. "Lena's Peace Patch." Kids started visiting after sessions. Sitting on the bench, talking about fears, parents, grief, and hope. One girl said, "It smells like home." Mick nodded, brushing soil off his hands. "It is." One foggy morning, Luca ran to the beach early and found something by the rocks, a weathered glass bottle with a rolled paper inside. He sprinted to Mick, breathless. They opened it together. Inside, in faded ink, "If you're reading this, the sea has brought you exactly where you need to be. Trust it." Even the broken pieces float home. No name, no date. But it shook something in Mick. Later that night, he sat by Lena's photo and whispered, "You'd love this kid." Chapter 13. Fire on the horizon. Summer came, hot and dry. The kind of dry that cracks sidewalks and lips. Then the fires started, bushfires tearing through inland forests, thick smoke reaching even Byron's coast. Wave Haven turned into an evacuation rest stop. Locals brought sandwiches, water. Talia led storytelling sessions under the tin roof shelter. Mick opened the shed to store supplies. For a week, the ocean was empty. The air smelled like ash and eucalyptus. Then, when the fires were finally controlled, the waves returned. And so did the kids. As Luca stepped back into the sea for the first time, chest rising with fear, he turned to Mick. "I'm ready." Luca caught a wave. Not a big one. Not a clean one. But he stood, knees shaking, arms wide. Talia, now out of her sling, screamed from the shore. Mick watched, heart full, salt in his eyes. The other kids ran to greet him. Luca didn't speak, just beamed. "You did it," Talia whispered. "I think I'm gonna be a surf coach," he said, with quiet pride. Mick chuckled. The sea just found its next guardian. Years later, tourists at Byron Bay still whisper about the old man who once ruled the tides. And the girl who turned pain into purpose. Wave Haven still stands. Bigger now. More stories. More kids. And a plaque by the entrance reads, "For those who've fallen and found their way back." The ocean doesn't forget. Neither do we.